Welcome to Bedtime Stories and Tales. This is a quiet place for gentle stories, soft voices, and peaceful moments. Here, each story is told slowly and calmly to help you unwind, relax, and drift into a restful sleep. Get comfortable, take a deep breath, and let the story carry you into the night. Before we begin, take the next few moments just for yourself. Gently bring your attention to your body. Notice where you are sitting or lying and feel the surface supporting you. Take a slow breath in through your nose and let it out gently through your mouth. Now, soften your shoulders. Unclench your jaw. Let your hands rest loosely. For the next few breaths, simply notice the rise and fall of your chest. There is nothing you need to do, nowhere you need to go. You are safe, you are present, and it is time to rest. Now that you are calm and relaxed, let us gently dive into our first story. The Golden Bird. There once was a king who kept a beautiful garden, and in this garden grew a tree that bore golden apples. Each day the apples were counted carefully, and when they began to ripen, the king noticed that one apple vanished every night. This troubled him greatly, and he asked his gardener to watch over the tree through the darkness. The gardener sent his eldest son to keep watch. But as midnight approached, the young man's eyes grew heavy, and he drifted into sleep. By morning, another apple had disappeared. The second son tried next, yet he too fell asleep at midnight, and another apple was gone by dawn. Then the youngest son offered to watch. At first the gardener hesitated, worried for his safety, but at last he agreed. The young man settled himself beneath the tree and waited. As the clock struck 12, he heard a soft rustling in the air. A bird of pure gold came flying through the darkness, reaching for an apple with its gleaming beak. The gardener's son leaped up and shot an arrow, but it caused no harm. The bird only lost a single golden feather from its tail before flying away into the night. In the morning, the feather was brought before the king and his council. Everyone marveled at its beauty, agreeing it was worth more than all the kingdom's treasures. But the king said, "One feather means nothing to me. I must have the whole bird." The gardener's eldest son set out to find the golden bird, confident it would be easy. Before long, he came to a wood where a fox sat by the roadside. He raised his bow to shoot, but the fox spoke to him. "Do not shoot me, and I will give you helpful advice. I know you seek the golden bird. This evening you will reach a village with 2 inns facing each other. One will look bright and welcoming, the other poor and plain. Do not enter the fine inn, but rest in the humble one instead." The young man thought, what could a fox know of such matters? He shot at the fox, but missed, and it ran into the forest. That evening he reached the village and saw the 2 inns. One was filled with music and laughter, while the other looked shabby and worn. I would be foolish to choose the poor inn, he thought, and he entered the cheerful one. There he feasted and made merry, forgetting all about the bird and his home. Time passed, and when the eldest son did not return, the second son set out. He too met the fox and received the same counsel. But when he reached the village, his brother called to him from the window of the bright inn, and he could not resist. He went inside and forgot his mission, just as his brother had. More time passed, and the youngest son wished to search for the golden bird as well. His father was reluctant, fearing he would lose this son too, but finally he agreed. When the young man reached the wood, he met the fox and listened carefully to its advice. He thanked the fox kindly and did not try to harm it. "Sit upon my tail," said the fox, "and you will travel faster." The young man did so, and they rushed through the forest, swift as the wind. When they reached the village, the son followed the fox's guidance and stayed at the humble inn. In the morning, the fox appeared again. "Go straight ahead until you reach a castle," it said. "Soldiers will lie sleeping before it, but pay them no mind. Inside you will find a room where the golden bird sits in a wooden cage. Nearby stands a beautiful golden cage, but do not move the bird into it, or you will regret it." The young man travelled on and found everything as the fox had described. He entered the castle and discovered the chamber with the golden bird in its simple wooden cage. The golden cage stood beside it, gleaming in the light. It would be strange to carry such a magnificent bird in this poor cage, he thought. So he opened the door and moved the bird to the golden cage. At once the bird let out a piercing cry. The soldiers woke and seized him, bringing him before the king. The next day the court judged him and sentenced him to death, unless he could bring the king a golden horse that ran swift as the wind. If he succeeded, the golden bird would be his. The young man set out again, feeling discouraged, when the fox appeared once more. "You see what comes from not heeding my words," it said gently. "Still, I will help you find the golden horse. Go straight ahead to a castle where the horse stands in its stall. A groom will lie sleeping beside it. Take the horse quietly, but be certain to use the old leather saddle, not the golden one nearby." They travelled swiftly, and all happened as the fox had said. The young man found the horse and the sleeping groom, but when he saw how fine the horse was, he thought it deserved the golden saddle. The moment he touched it, the groom woke and cried out. Guards rushed in and captured him, and once again he stood before the court. This time they said he would die unless he brought them a beautiful princess. If he succeeded, he would receive both the bird and the horse. The young man left feeling sorrowful, but the fox came to him again. "Go straight on," it said, "and by evening you will reach a castle. At midnight the princess goes to bathe. Meet her there and kiss her, and she will come with you willingly. But do not let her say goodbye to her parents." When they arrived at the castle, everything happened as foretold. At midnight the young man met the princess and kissed her, and she agreed to leave with him. But she wept and begged to bid farewell to her father. He refused at first, but her tears moved him, and at last he consented. The moment she entered her father's house, the guards woke and captured him once more. The king said, "You shall never have my daughter unless you remove the hill that blocks my view, and you have 8 days to do it." The hill was enormous, and after 7 days of work, almost nothing had changed. Then the fox appeared. "Rest now," it said, "I will work for you." In the morning the young man woke to find the hill gone. He went joyfully to the king, who had no choice but to keep his word. The young man and the princess departed together, and the fox said, "We can have all 3, the princess, the horse, and the bird." The young man wondered how this could be possible. The fox explained, "When the king asks for the princess, present her to him. He will be delighted and bring out the golden horse. Mount it and reach out to bid them farewell. But take the princess's hand last. Then lift her quickly onto the horse behind you and ride away as fast as you can." Everything went according to plan. Next, the fox said, "When you reach the castle where the bird is kept, I will wait with the princess while you go inside. The king will show you the bird when he sees you have brought the horse. Ask to examine it closely, and when you hold it, ride away." This too succeeded, and they carried off the bird. They rode on until they reached a great wood. There the fox said, "Please kill me and cut off my head and feet." The young man refused. "Then I will give you one last piece of advice," said the fox. "Beware of two things. Do not ransom anyone from the gallows, and do not sit down by the side of any river." Then it disappeared. The young man rode on with the princess until they came to the village where his brothers had stayed. There he heard a commotion and learned that two men were about to be hanged. Coming closer, he recognized his brothers, who had become thieves. He asked if they could be saved, and though the people said only gold could free them, he paid the ransom without hesitation. His brothers were released and joined him on the journey home. When they reached the wood where he had first met the fox, the day was warm and pleasant. His brothers suggested they rest by the river. He agreed, forgetting the fox's warning. While he sat peacefully, his brothers crept up behind him and pushed him down the steep bank. They took the princess, the horse, and the bird, and returned to their master's court, claiming everything as their own reward. The youngest son fell to the riverbed below. The water was shallow, but the banks were high and steep, and he could find no way to climb out. Then the old fox appeared and scolded him gently for not following its advice. "Still, I cannot leave you here," it said. "Hold on to my tail." The fox pulled him to safety and warned him, "Your brothers have set guards to kill you if you return. You must go in disguise." Dressed as a poor man, the young man slipped into the king's court. The moment he entered, the horse began to eat, the bird began to sing, and the princess stopped weeping. He went to the king and revealed his brother's treachery. They were punished, and the princess was restored to him. In time, he became heir to the kingdom. Many years later, he walked in the wood and met the fox once more. With tears in its eyes, the fox begged him to cut off its head and feet. At last, reluctantly, he did so. In that moment, the fox transformed into a man, the brother of the princess, who had been lost for many, many years. And so all the enchantments were ended, and peace returned to the kingdom at last. Take a quiet moment and notice how your body feels. Perhaps you are beginning to feel a little more tired now. That is perfectly okay. Stay comfortable, stay relaxed, as we gently move on. The water of life. Long ago, in a distant land, there lived a king who had 3 sons. One day, the king fell gravely ill, so ill that no one believed he would survive. His sons were deeply troubled by their father's condition, and as they walked together through the palace gardens, lost in worry, they met a small, elderly man. He asked them what troubled them so. They explained that their father was dying, and they feared nothing could save him. "I know what would help," the old man said gently. "It is the water of life. A single drink would restore him to health. But I must warn you, it is very difficult to find." The eldest son spoke up at once. "I will find it," he declared. He went to his father and asked permission to search for the water of life, saying it was the only thing that could save him. At first the king refused, not wanting to place his son in danger. But the prince insisted so earnestly that his father finally agreed. In his heart, the eldest son thought to himself that if he brought back the water, he would surely become sole heir to the kingdom. And so he set out on his journey. After traveling for some time, he came to a deep valley surrounded by towering rocks and dense forests. As he looked around, he noticed a small, peculiar dwarf standing on one of the rocks above him. The dwarf wore a pointed cap and a bright scarlet cloak. "Prince, where are you going in such haste?" the dwarf called down to him.
"What business is that of yours, you ugly creature?" the prince replied rudely, and continued riding forward. But the dwarf was offended by his arrogance, and he cast an enchantment upon the prince. As the prince rode on, the mountain pass grew narrower and narrower, until finally he could go no further. When he tried to turn his horse around and go back, he heard mocking laughter echoing around him, and discovered that the path behind him had closed as well. He was trapped completely. He tried to dismount and continue on foot, but found he could not move at all. And so he remained there, held fast by the spell. Meanwhile, the old king waited day after day, hoping for his eldest son's return. Finally, the second son said, "Father, let me go in search of the water of life." For he thought to himself that his brother must surely be dead, and the kingdom would pass to him if he found the water. The king was reluctant to let another son go, but eventually he gave his consent. The second prince followed the same road his brother had taken. He too met the dwarf, who stopped him at the same spot in the mountains and asked, "Prince, where are you going in such haste?" "Mind your own affairs, busybody," the prince answered scornfully, and rode on without stopping. The dwarf placed the same spell upon him as he had on his elder brother, and soon the second prince found himself trapped in the heart of the mountains. This is what comes to those who are too proud to listen to others or accept good advice. After the second prince had been gone for a long while, the youngest son said he would go and search for the water of life, trusting that he could make his father well again. He set out, and when he reached the valley among the mountains, the dwarf appeared to him as well. "Prince, where are you going in such haste?" the dwarf asked. "I am searching for the water of life," the prince replied politely, "because my father is dying. Can you help me? Please, if you know anything, I would be grateful for your guidance." "Do you know where to find it?" asked the dwarf. "No, I do not," said the prince. "Please tell me if you know." "Because you have spoken kindly to me," said the dwarf, "and because you are wise enough to ask for help, I will tell you how to find what you seek. The water flows from a well inside an enchanted castle. To reach it safely, I will give you an iron wand and 2 small loaves of bread. Strike the iron door of the castle 3 times with the wand, and it will open. Inside, 2 hungry lions will be waiting, ready to spring. Throw them the bread, and they will let you pass. Then hurry to the well and take some of the water of life before the clock strikes 12. If you stay longer than that, the door will close behind you forever."
The prince thanked his small friend in the scarlet cloak warmly and took the wand and bread. He travelled on and on, over land and sea, until at last he reached the castle and found everything just as the dwarf had described. The door opened at the third strike of the wand, and once the lions had been quieted with the bread, he passed through into the castle. He came to a beautiful hall where several knights sat motionless, as if in a trance. He took the rings from their fingers and placed them on his own. In another room he found a sword and a loaf of bread on a table, and he took these as well. Going further, he entered a room where a beautiful young woman sat upon a couch. She welcomed him with joy and said that if he would free her from the spell that bound her, the kingdom would be his if he returned in a year to marry her. She told him that the well containing the water of life was in the palace gardens, and urged him to hurry and draw water before the clock struck 12. He walked on through the beautiful gardens until he came to a pleasant, shady spot with a couch. Feeling tired, he thought he would rest for just a moment and enjoy the peaceful surroundings. He lay down, and sleep came over him unexpectedly. He did not wake until he heard the clock striking 11:45. He leaped up in alarm, rushed to the well, filled a cup with water, and hurried toward the exit. Just as he reached the iron door, the clock struck 12, and the door swung shut so quickly that it caught the heel of his boot, tearing off a small piece. Despite this, he was overjoyed to have obtained the water of life. As he made his way home, he passed by the little dwarf again. When the dwarf saw the sword and the loaf of bread, he said, "You have won valuable treasures. With that sword you can defeat entire armies with a single blow, and that bread will never run out." The prince thought to himself that he could not return home without his brothers. "My good friend," he said, "can you tell me where my 2 brothers are? They set out before me to find the water of life, but they never returned." "I imprisoned them between 2 mountains with a spell," said the dwarf, "because they were proud and rude and refused to ask for help." The prince pleaded so earnestly for his brothers that the dwarf finally released them, though reluctantly, warning, "Be careful of them, for their hearts are not good." The youngest brother was happy to see his siblings again, and he told them everything that had happened, how he had found the water of life, how he had freed a beautiful princess from an enchantment, and how she had promised to wait a year and then marry him and share her kingdom with him. The 3 brothers rode on together, and along their journey home they came to a country that had been devastated by war and terrible famine. The prince gave the king of that land the magic bread, and it fed all the people of the kingdom. He lent the king the wonderful sword, which defeated the enemy army and brought peace and prosperity back to the land. In the same way, he helped 2 other countries they passed through. When they reached the sea and boarded a ship, the 2 older brothers spoke quietly to each other. "Our younger brother has the water that we could not find," they said. "Our father will favor him and give him the kingdom that should be ours by right." Filled with envy and bitterness, they plotted how they might ruin him. They waited until he fell into a deep sleep, then poured out the water of life from his cup and took it for themselves, replacing it with bitter seawater. When they finally arrived home, the youngest son brought his cup to the sick king so that he might drink and be healed. But as soon as the king tasted the bitter seawater, he became even more ill than before. Then the 2 older brothers came forward and blamed their youngest brother,
saying he had tried to poison their father. They claimed they had found the real water of life and had brought it with them. When the king drank what they offered, his illness left him immediately, and he became as strong and healthy as he had been in his youth.
The two brothers then went to their younger brother and mocked him. "Well, brother, you found the water of life, didn't you? You did all the work, and we shall have all the reward. With all your cleverness, why couldn't you keep your eyes open? Next year, one of us will claim your beautiful princess, if you're not careful. You'd better not say anything about this to our father. He won't believe a word you say, and if you tell tales, you'll lose your life. But keep quiet, and we'll let you be." The old king remained very angry with his youngest son, believing he had truly tried to harm him. He called his court together and asked what should be done. Everyone agreed that the prince should be put to death. The prince knew nothing of this decision until one day when he went hunting alone with the king's chief huntsman. The huntsman looked so troubled that the prince asked, "My friend, what's wrong?" "I cannot tell you," the huntsman replied sadly, but the prince urged him gently, "Please tell me. I won't be angry, I promise you that." "The king has ordered me to kill you," the huntsman finally confessed. The prince was shocked. "Then let me live," he said. "Let us exchange clothes. Take my royal coat to show my father, and I will wear your simple one." "Gladly," said the huntsman. "I'm relieved to save you, for I could never have done what was commanded." They exchanged coats, and the prince disappeared into the forest. Some time later, 3 grand ambassadors arrived at the old king's court, bringing rich gifts of gold and precious stones for his youngest son. These were sent by the 3 kings whose lands the prince had saved with his magic sword and bread. This touched the old king's heart deeply, and he began to wonder if his son might be innocent after all. "If only my son were still alive," he said to his court. "How it grieves me that I had him killed." "He is still alive," said the huntsman. "I took pity on him and let him go free, and brought back only his royal coat." The king was overwhelmed with joy and proclaimed throughout his kingdom that if his son would return to court, he would be forgiven completely. Meanwhile, the princess waited eagerly for her rescuer to return. She had a road built leading up to her palace, made entirely of shining gold, and she instructed her courtiers that whoever rode straight up to the gate along the golden road would be her true love, and they should let him in. But anyone who rode to one side of it was not the right person and should be sent away immediately. When the time drew near, the eldest brother decided to go to the princess, intending to claim that he was the one who had freed her so that he could marry her and gain the kingdom. When he approached the palace and saw the beautiful golden road, he stopped to admire it. It would be a shame to ride on such a beautiful road, he thought, and turned aside to ride along the right side of it. But when he reached the gate, the guards saw which path he had taken and told him he was not who he claimed to be, and sent him away. Soon afterward, the second prince set out on the same errand. When he came to the golden road, and his horse placed one foot upon it, he stopped and gazed at it admiringly. "What a pity if anything should damage this," he said to himself. He too turned aside and rode along the left side of the road. When he reached the gate, the guards told him he was not the true prince, and he had to leave.
When the full year had passed, the third brother finally left the forest where he had been hiding from his father's anger and set out to find his promised bride. He rode on, thinking only of her, moving so quickly that he didn't even notice what the road beneath him was made of. His horse carried him straight over the golden road, and when he reached the gate, it flew open. The princess welcomed him joyfully, saying he was truly her deliverer and would now be her husband and lord of the kingdom. After the first happiness of their reunion had settled, the princess told him she had heard that his father had forgiven him and wished him to return home. Before the wedding, the prince went to visit his father, bringing the princess with him. He told his father the whole story, how his brothers had deceived and betrayed him, and yet how he had borne it all out of love for his father. The old king was furious and wanted to punish his wicked sons, but they had already fled, escaping by ship across the wide sea. Where they went, no one knew or cared. The old king then gathered his court and invited everyone in the kingdom to come and celebrate the wedding of his son and the princess. Young and old, noble and common, all came when summoned. Among them came the friendly dwarf, still wearing his pointed cap and scarlet cloak, now freshly new. The wedding was held with great celebration. The bells rang merrily, and all the good people danced and sang, feasting and rejoicing long into the night. And there our story gently comes to rest.
Feeling a little more sleepy now? There is no need to answer or think about it. Just remain comfortable and relaxed as we continue. The White Snake. Long ago there lived a king who was renowned throughout the land for his great wisdom. Nothing remained hidden from him, and it seemed as though news of the most secret matters reached him carried on the air itself. But he had a peculiar custom. Every day after dinner, when the table had been cleared and everyone else had left, a trusted servant would bring him one final dish. It was always covered, and even the servant did not know what lay beneath the lid. No one knew, for the king never lifted the cover until he was completely alone. This practice had continued for a long time, when one day the servant who carried the dish away found himself overcome with curiosity. He could not resist bringing the dish to his own room. After carefully locking the door, he lifted the cover and saw a white snake lying on the plate. When he saw it, he could not deny himself the pleasure of tasting it. He cut off a small piece and placed it in his mouth. The moment it touched his tongue, he heard a strange whispering of tiny voices outside his window. He went to listen and discovered it was the sparrows chattering together, telling one another about all the things they had seen in the fields and woods. Eating the snake had given him the power to understand the language of animals. Now it happened that on this very same day, the queen lost her most beautiful ring. Suspicion fell upon this trusted servant who had access to every room in the palace. The king ordered the man brought before him and threatened that unless he could identify the thief by the next day, he himself would be considered guilty and executed. The servant declared his innocence, but he was dismissed without a better answer. Troubled and afraid, he went down into the courtyard to think about how he might help himself. Some ducks were sitting quietly together beside a brook, resting and smoothing their feathers with their bills while having a private conversation. The servant stood nearby and listened. They were telling each other about all the places they had been that morning and what good food they had found. One duck said "Something is lying heavy on my stomach. While I was eating hastily this morning, I swallowed a ring that was lying beneath the queen's window." The servant immediately seized her by the neck, carried her to the kitchen, and said to the cook, "Here is a fine duck. Please prepare her for roasting." "Indeed," said the cook, weighing her in his hand. "She has spared no effort to fatten herself, and has been ready for roasting for some time." He cut off her head, and as she was being prepared for the spit, the queen's ring was found inside her. The servant could now easily prove his innocence. The king, wanting to make amends for the wrong done to him, allowed him to ask for any favour, and promised him the finest position at court that he could wish for. But the servant refused everything, and asked only for a horse and some money for travelling, as he wished to see the world and journey for a while. When his request was granted, he set out on his way. One day he came to a pond where he saw 3 fish caught among the reeds, gasping for water. Though it is said that fish cannot speak, he heard them lamenting that they must die so miserably. Having a kind heart, he dismounted from his horse and put the 3 prisoners back into the water. They leaped with delight, lifted their heads above the surface, and called to him, "We will remember you and repay you for saving us." He rode on, and after a while it seemed to him that he heard a voice coming from the sand at his feet. He listened, and heard an ant-king complaining, "Why can't people keep their clumsy beasts off our bodies? That stupid horse with his heavy hooves has been trampling my people without mercy." The servant turned onto a side path, and the ant-king cried out to him, "We will remember you. One good turn deserves another." The path led him into a forest where he saw 2 old ravens standing by their nest, throwing out their young ones. "Out with you, you idle good-for-nothing creatures," they cried. "We cannot find food for you any longer. You are big enough now to provide for yourselves." But the poor young ravens lay upon the ground, flapping their wings and crying, "Oh, what helpless birds we are! We must care for ourselves, yet we cannot fly. What can we do but lie here and starve?" The good young man dismounted, killed his horse with his sword, and gave it to them for food. The young ravens hopped up to it, satisfied their hunger, and cried, "We will remember you. One good turn deserves another." Now he had to travel on foot, and after walking a long distance he came to a large city. There was great noise and commotion in the streets, and a man rode past on horseback, calling aloud, "The king's daughter seeks a husband, but whoever wishes for her hand must perform a difficult task, and if he does not succeed, he will lose his life." Many had already tried and failed. Nevertheless, when the young man saw the king's daughter, he was so overcome by her great beauty that he forgot all danger. He went before the king and declared himself a suitor. He was led out to the sea, and a gold ring was thrown into the water before his eyes. The king commanded him to retrieve the ring from the bottom of the sea, adding, "If you come up again without it, you will be thrown in again and again until you perish beneath the waves." All the people grieved for the handsome youth. Then they departed, leaving him alone by the sea. He stood on the shore, wondering what he should do, when suddenly he saw 3 fish swimming toward him. They were the very fish whose lives he had saved. The one in the middle held a mussel in its mouth, which it laid on the shore at the young man's feet. When he picked it up and opened it, the gold ring lay inside the shell.
Full of joy, he brought it to the king, expecting to receive the promised reward. But when the proud princess saw that he was not her equal in birth, she scorned him, and demanded that he first perform another task. She went down into the garden and scattered 10 sacks full of millet seed on the grass with her own hands. Then she said, "Tomorrow morning, before sunrise, every seed must be gathered up, and not a single grain may be missing." The young man sat down in the garden and wondered how it might be possible to complete this task, but he could think of nothing. He sat there sorrowfully, awaiting the break of day, when he would be led to his death. But as soon as the first rays of sunlight shone into the garden, he saw all 10 sacks standing side by side, completely full, with not a single grain missing. The ant king had come during the night with thousands upon thousands of ants, and the grateful creatures had worked diligently to pick up all the millet seed and gather it into the sacks. Soon the king's daughter came down into the garden herself, and was amazed to see that the young man had completed the task she had given him. But she could not yet conquer her proud heart, and said, "Although he has performed both tasks, he shall not be my husband until he has brought me an apple from the tree of life." The young man did not know where the tree of life stood, but he set out and resolved to continue walking as long as his legs would carry him, though he had no hope of finding it. After wandering through 3 kingdoms, he came one evening to a forest and lay down beneath a tree to sleep. He heard a rustling in the branches above, and a golden apple fell into his hand. At the same moment, 3 ravens flew down to him and perched upon his knee. "We are the 3 young ravens whom you saved from starving," they said. "When we had grown large and heard that you were seeking the golden apple, we flew over the sea to the end of the world, where the tree of life stands, and we have brought you the apple." The young man, filled with joy, set out for home, and brought the golden apple to the king's beautiful daughter, who now had no more excuses to offer. They cut the apple of life in 2 and ate it together. Her heart became filled with love for him, and they lived in perfect happiness to a great age. And there our story peacefully ends.